Good morning and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video is a response to some comments and debates that came across my channel involving whether or not the Holmes edition of Basic D&D was a direct precursor of AD&D First Edition by design. Was it meant to be utilized and bring the players directly into the AD&D First Edition line? Now, my impression, prior to actually doing a deeper dive, was that D&D and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons there was a clear split between the two. And I never really dug into that question of was the Holmes edition the lead-in to AD&D, rather than the Holmes edition was just a continuation of the D&D line, and then right from Holmes edition goes into Moldvay Cook, and then goes into the Menser edition of D&D, and so at one point they certainly do have a parallel track. So you have the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons track, which is strictly Gary Gygax and then other contributors along with it, with the exclusion of Dave Arneson. And then you have the D&D line, which is still connected to Dave Arneson, and Gary Gygax, obviously, going forward as well. So what I decided to do is, I said, what, I will get back to, this discussion, and I will take a look at the materials that I actually have and see where, where this discussion can go, and whether I'm proven wrong, or, whether I can support my thought was that it was going to go forward and run that parallel track right along this way. But I also want to spend a little bit of time just showing you the materials that I'm actually using to go through this. So let me switch views here and go to full screen now. I am using several different sources, and they're not all the first printings of each, and so there may be some differences here and there between printings, but they're all the first editions. I would say they used editions rather than printings, but I think that the rules wise, it's going to be fairly straightforward, and I won't be deviating too much from the reality of the thing. So let's go with, so I'm starting off with my Holmes edition, and this is the third printing, which they call third edition, December 1979. All right, so this was on the latter portion of the 77 through 79. I really couldn't find a 77 PDF of this, but I do have the second printing of the PDF, which I will be going through once I get to that portion of this video, where I start breaking down and taking a look at, the Holmes edition. Now, one of the first things I noticed when I started taking a look at this again, doing this deeper dive, was that on the front, and I never really realized it, but it says the original adult fantasy role-playing game for 3 or more players, and I don't recall ever seeing that adult fantasy, on there before. I'd have to double check and look at my first edition and see. I don't believe it has that on there, but but it'll be interesting to see if that is actually there, and if this is a change from that. Actually, let me, instead of just wondering, so I got this here. So let's see what it says on the front. It says rules for fantastic medieval war games, campaigns playable with paper and pencil and miniature figures, and yeah, so it does not have that either. Um, and this just for so this is the 1974, and I'm assuming the original printing of it, because there's no other indicator. So anyway, that's so that settles that question right there. So the third printing, 1979, December of 79. Now, my impression was that if this does say to utilize the AD&D Monster Manual, because the Monster Manual was the first of the AD&D releases. The release order of the of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was Monster Manual first, Player's Handbook second, and then the Dungeon Master's third. Dungeon Master Guide third. So now this is a later printing because it has the the easily orange spine and the front cover art and everything. This particular one was printed. It's always hard to find these sometimes. So this was 77, 78. At least that's what it was listed at, and this was printed the fourth. So this is the fourth printing, August 1979. So this is actually earlier than this particular printing I have here. Now, when I show you the PDF version of the Holmes edition, it's the 1978 printing of it. So we'll be back on line much better there. And then this is my hard copy of my Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. And again, the easily cover. And this one says 78. And this actual printing, this is the sixth printing, January of 80. So this is, a later edition of it. The others would have came around the same time frame. I believe all of these were released in the same year. And I just don't have the original covers to really do that comparison as to when. But Holmes edition obviously preceded these others, these other printings or AD&D first edition. So let me get to my my second printing of the Holmes edition and start going through it and start taking a look at that that argument that this was a true precursor to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So to allow the player base to move from D&D Basic over to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So I am going to. So again, this is a PDF I found online, and here you have that. I will expand here. So adult fantasy role playing game, which like I said, I've never picked up on that before, and this particular one is the second printing, January of 78. So predates the others as well. And we go through here, and here we have right here, this book is based upon the original work published in 1974 and 3 supplemental books published in the 2-year period after the initial release of Dungeons & Dragons. It is aimed solely at and introducing the reader to the concepts of fantasy role-playing and the basic play of this game. To this end, it limits itself to basics. The rules contained herein allow only for the first 3 levels of player progression, and instructions for the game referee, the Dungeon Master, are kept to a minimum necessary to allow him to conduct basic games. This is absolutely necessary because the game is completely open-ended, is subject to modification, expansion, and interpretation according to the desires of the group participating, and is in general not bounded by the conventional limitations of other types of games. The work is far more detailed and more easily understood than were the original rulebooks nonetheless, for with it and the other basic components of the game, any intelligent and imaginative person can speedily understand and play Dungeons and Dragons as it was meant to be played. Players who desire to go beyond the basic are directed to advanced Dungeons and Dragons books. All right, and so on. So, yes, it's a lead into as far as saying this is still the basic game, and you can then take this what you learn from playing the basic game, and if you wish to go into the more advanced, you're going to shift over to the advanced Dungeons and Dragons. All right, and they go through some more details over here, but we're still not at the point where game mechanics wise it is a direct translation, and that's, or a direct transition from this to that. And if I go back to my own memory, and just let me switch views here again. If I go back to my own memory of this, because I was playing during this time period frame, right? My dungeon master was introduced us to the game with the Holmes edition, and I know that's, I'm fairly certain of that because I know one of my earliest characters I played was a lizard man fighter, and that was directly permissible in with the Holmes edition. Second thing I realized is that we played, and this would have been around 77, 78 or so. We started with 77. My Lizard Man character wasn't until the Monster Manual came out. All right, so when this Monster Manual came out, and I came across the Trampier picture of a lizard man, that is what inspired me to actually play that. I mean, there we have, very, very famous, lizard man picture. Dat, and my character was actually named Dat as well. So it was definitely something that I was engaged in the game at the time, as we were using this as the rule set, and then he had the original AD&D first edition monster manual. So we used these in conjunction with each other, which was always my impression. My impression was that, it was it wasn't supposed to be a direct transition. It was just that when the Monster Manual comes out, you can certainly use the Holmes edition and insert the monsters from the AD&D Monster Manual into that system until the Player's Handbook comes out. And then once the Player's Handbook comes out, you would stop using this, which is exactly what we did. We stopped playing, Dungeons and Dragons Basic, and we transitioned directly over into just running AD&D. And once we had all three books, we were good to go. So I would say by 1980, we were completely shifted from Dungeons and Dragons and went directly into Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So let's take some other looks at the PDF though. So, and there are certainly references. Now this again is the second printing, and they do keep on referring us to take a look at Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. There are special rules for halflings, dwarves, and elves who wish to be thieves. These are given in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. But They also appear to be at least somewhat hinted to here as well. Here's another reference to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and but these game mechanics are still very much basic D&D, right? There is the, there is the character classes of the warrior classes, and then you have the separation. I know I'm scrolling back and forth. I will get to where it actually breaks down. Here they still just have the 4-quadrant or five areas of alignment. And let's see this. So here we go. So you have fighting men, you have elves, halflings, and dwarves. So all fighting men, elves, halflings, and dwarves fall within the same category here of experience and hit die, with the exception of halflings. Halflings use a D6 for their hit die. Everything else uses a D10. So fighting men, elves, and dwarves use a D8. Halflings use a D6, but they all fall within that same category there. Then you have magic users. They're using a D4. They're separate character class. You have clerics, D6 separate character class, and thieves. They use a D4 separate character class. Dwarves, halflings, and elves. Halflings and dwarves progress as fighter men, but halflings use the D6 for hit points. Elves progress in 2 areas, fighting man and magic user. They use a 6-sided die. All right, and then we go through the thieves' abilities and such, and clerical abilities. And so here we have magic spells and saving throws and whatnot. So you still have the concept. I can switch out of here now. You still have the D&D concepts of race as class, with just a small fluctuation when you're dealing with elves. Elves are still fighter magic users essentially, so that's still within that race as class. Halflings can be treated as fighting men unless they want to shift over to thieves and follow the thieves line. And they keep on referencing to the AD&D Player's Handbook, right? So I'm going to start taking a look at this here now. And what you have here is you do have that separation. You no longer have race as class. You have your classes, and these are your primary classes of fighter. Now it's called a fighter, a thief, a magic user, a cleric, and then a few other classes that are thrown in. So now you have clerics, druids, fighters, paladins, rangers, magic users, illusionists, thieves, assassins, and monks. All right, so those are all the classes that are included in AD&D First Edition. Now, again, that is a definite separation from what Holmes Edition did, and really is going to expand the gameplay to such an extent that they're no longer really playing like the same thing. So it is definitely a major rule shift. You also have, more races involved in this as well. So you have dwarves, elves, gnomes, half-elves, halflings, half-orcs, and humans, all right, in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. You then have the ability scores, minimums and maximums, based on both race and gender. All right. And so even that adds another layer of difference between Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and the Holmes edition of D&D. So it's certainly not a smooth transition from Holmes edition to AD&D first edition. It's a, you know, all it really does is it indicates you can start to integrate AD&D into, while you're using the Holmes edition, particularly for the monster manual. But then it also indicates at the same time, once the player's handbook comes out, if you want to go beyond third level, then you're going to transition directly over into that, and you're going to stop using the Holmes edition. At that point, you can set that book aside, and now you're going to go forward with this. Now, I don't know anybody who is going to take their Holmes edition first level character over re-rolling a new character in AD&D first edition. Number one, the attribute rolling. There are more options in AD&D first edition than in the Holmes edition. You're going to have more modifiers and everything like that. Your characters are generally going to be much more powerful in AD&D first edition, even at the first level comparison, than they were in the Holmes edition. And so I think that many people were just using the Holmes edition rules as a placeholder. And this was my argument, was that it was a placeholder until the rest of this was released into publication. So we were supposed to use the Holmes edition rules, use the monster manual. Once the player's handbook came out second for AD&D first edition, we were to set this aside and to pick up at where we kind of either left off or re-roll, roll new characters for AD&D first edition. So it's been a real eye-opener, because there were some things that I came across here that I just didn't recall and never really focused on. So I'm really thankful that my commenters brought me to do this slightly more deeper dive into the differences between the two. Yes, the Holmes edition definitely tells people to move to AD&D first edition. They don't do it so much through the rules, though. I think they're doing it more. They did it more through placeholders. So you were only supposed to use the Holmes edition until the Player's Handbook came out for AD&D first edition. And then once the Dungeon Master's Guide came out, then it was supposed, that was the third in the core books. And like I think most people shifted by that point. And they, those that continue to play Dungeons and Dragons through the Moldvay and then through the Menser basic expert, BECMI, basic expert, companion, and so forth, master, and then immortals, if they actually did that. That was a separate line, absolutely. So anyway, for the most part, I agree with with my commenters that this was a transition product, and it certainly promoted moving to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons once those books were released. I don't think that it was a smooth transition game mechanics wise. I think that it was a very abrupt change, and very much like we see now when people are talking about the newest edition of Dungeons and Dragons that they're working on for 2024, and they say it's backwards compatible. That no one in their right mind is going to use the 2014 Player's Handbook to make a D&D character to play in 2025. They're just going to use the newer rules because it's making the character classes and the characters in general just more powerful right from the start. And it's similar to this year now, right? It's you weren't going to continue playing your Holmes edition created characters in an advanced Dungeons and Dragons, campaign and setting because the differences between the two systems are really quite dramatic, and so you're going to create a new character for that new campaign and into that new into that new game system because it really was very much a new game system. So there you have it. Pretty much they were right that it was a transition. I will argue that not game wise, game mechanics wise, so much as just the intention of Gary Gygax was to have the Holmes edition move people and encourage people to move on to his new system. So gonna leave it at that. Please feel free to leave your comments in there. Like the video if you liked it. Remember to subscribe and share and do all of those things that really do help the channel continue to grow and get the algorithm, as one of my commentators always go in for, the algorithm. Just get it out there for people to take a look at. And I'm really looking forward to your comments to see if I kind of hit the mark with what you were hoping for in this. And we can certainly revisit this topic because it is a very interesting topic for me and obviously for some of you too, to see when do these major shifts in game design really take place, going from one edition to the next and so forth. So have a great rest of your day, and thanks for joining. Take care. I apologize for this lack of graphic. I have to replace it.